Welcome back to episode 61 of Defeating Weekly. I'm your host, Craig Olson. You guys, I am super excited for this week's episode. We've got a super special guest. I'm not going to blurb with all the extra stuff I normally do at the beginning of episodes. I want to jump right in. So, in the past 2+ years, I have followed, chatted with our guest, read his book, Seven Summits to Success. Phenomenal book. Been inspired and learned so much from him. He's a holder of multiple world records, a 2-time terminal cancer survivor. Amazing. Keynote speaker and author. He's the only person, this is a huge accomplishment, so I got to make sure I say all these correct, to climb Everest, the 7 summits, both poles, the Hawaii Ironman, all with one lung. Only person in history that's done those. So super awesome. He was also voted top 8 most inspirational people in history, which is phenomenal. I feel like that in itself is an accomplishment that we all would love to strive to have. And so I'd like to welcome Sean Swarner to the podcast today. Sean, great to finally get to meet you.
Absolutely, Craig. I appreciate the intro. I'm sitting here thinking, the only difference between me and somebody else is I may have a warmer jacket.
Hey,
That's it.
You know what though? But you've also kind of leading into what our topic today is. You have this mindset, even from what I've seen from kind of a distance, that you're going to do what it takes. And I think that is so cool about you, and something that I just want to continue to eat up that knowledge that you present for others. So we can kind of jump right in kind of to our topic for the day. And that is the idea of battling to reach goals. I feel like reading your story and learning more about you, that's kind of what your life has been like. You've been battling to reach goals through difficult challenges that you've experienced in your life. Is that a pretty fair assessment to kind of say?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I would say that, whatever you go through, for me, like you mentioned it, 2 terminal cancers. I remember being 13 going through my first cancer, 16, 17 was the second cancer. So basically my whole teen years. But I remember being 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe on the bottom of the shower floor, pulling chunks of hair out of the drain so the water could go down, right? Because my hair was falling out from the chemo. And I looked at myself, inside, and I thought that I could either focus on not dying or I could focus on living. So looking at it from those 2 perspectives, I realized that not getting through it, surviving was the only option. So struggling through everything I've been through and climbing the mountains, I've realized that my pain and anyone's pain, anything that they've been through, can become their purpose or their passion.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that kind of leads into kind of talking about, so you being a 2-time cancer survivor and having one lung, how did you find the drive? And I think you kind of already answered it, to battle through those things, those difficult times, to reach the goals that you have, such as summiting all these massive mountains.
I would say again, it goes back to what I learned, or what I used in the mountains, on the mountains, to reach the summit. What I used to ski to the South Pole, ski to the North Pole, do the Hawaii Ironman, I learned going through the cancers, and that's the end goal. If you look at it from a really, really warped perspective, the end goal of life is death. I mean, we're all going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of cancer would be death. But it's very similar to when you reach the summit of a mountain, you're not done.
Mm-hmm.
You're only halfway when you reach the top. You have to go back down. So it's not really over until you get back safely. So it's like going into the cancer. When I was in remission, I had to come back out. So I had to come back down off that mountain. But one thing I realized was tapping into my personal core values, having a deeper reason, a deeper purpose, and a deeper meaning for what I was going to be doing. Like the mountaintop, it's never about the mountaintop. It's never about the finish line. It's about what that represents to me. One of my personal core values: freedom, security, love, appreciation, personal growth, charity, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I learned that again, going back to that child, maybe this time around, say I was 17 years old, I remember being terrified to close my eyes because I didn't know if they're going to if they're going to open the next morning. I was read my last rites. I remember man of the cloth at the end of the bed, giving me my last rites. And I think, well, I know one of my personal core values is family.
Mhm.
And as a young child and a teen, I think what happened was I looked at what my parents' lives could have been if they lost their firstborn son.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was one of the major driving forces to push forward because I didn't want my parents to go through the pain of losing their son to cancer. So having a deeper reason behind the action, and for me the first one was probably family, which it still is.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. And I listeners know that I wrote a book kind of related to my first wife, Rachel, and her battle with cancer. And I just as you're talking, I feel like there was a lot of similarities between you and her drive to live, not just survive, like you talked about earlier, live 10 plus years when you're given 15 months. So that's really cool to see that correlation there. And I think you kind of just answered. You're doing a great job of segueing through my questions here. So was there anyone or something that continued to motivate you? And I think you kind of just touched on it with the family kind of being one of your major motivators. How about now as you continue? Is it still kind of the family, or do you have other motivators that kind of push you even to this day?
Definitely family. Definitely family is a big motivator, but also everyone touched by cancer. So going back to mentioning having a deeper purpose, I started with Everest. And when I got to the top of Everest, I unfurled a flag that had names of people touched by cancer. And the whole time I was climbing up the mountain, a lot of people don't realize how long it takes. I was climbing up and down the mountain for a month and a half, right? So the whole time I was climbing, I had that flag folded up in my chest pocket close to my heart as a constant reminder of my goals, like why I was there.
That's
And I
cool.
wanted to get those other people to the top. So essentially, I didn't climb on Everest. I was pulled up there by everybody else.
That's
And
awesome.
I did the same thing on the top of every other mountain, the South Pole, the North Pole. So everyone touched by cancer, that's hands down a giant inspiration for me because I can always pick up the satellite phone and say, look, I'm done, I'm freezing, it's 80 below, get the helicopter in here, I lost 5 of my toes, I'm ready to go
I'm
home.
done.
But the people who are battling for their lives, people who are struggling, can't pick up the phone and say, I think I'll do it tomorrow, or I think I'll do it next year. They don't have that option.
Mhm.
So definitely people touched by cancer.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So one of the things that we kind of do on Defeating Weekly is we always try to give people kind of quick action steps that maybe they can take and apply to their own lives. Within kind of this idea of battling to reach our goals, do you have kind of some action steps or some usable tips that might help people that they could take and use in their daily lives?
Absolutely. Know where you are because you have to know where you are before you know where you want to go. Know who you are. I'll back that up. Know who you are because you have to know who you are before you know where you want to go.
Okay.
Because the person you are in the future isn't the same person you are now. What's different? And that probably goes to the next one, which would be personal core values. So if you're trying to reach a goal and you haven't reached it yet, what's one of your personal core values you can focus on to help you get there? Is it appreciation? Is it security? What does that goal mean to you? And then another one would be utilize vivid visualization. And this is huge. A lot of people picture themselves being successful almost from like a dream world, right? So they're like a third person point of view. And you have to change that to first person. First person point of view. A perfect example is when I was picturing myself summiting Everest every single night for a year before I went up there. I was picturing myself taking the last few steps to the top, and it was from my perspective, not like a
Okay.
drone's
Yeah,
perspective.
you're not the aerial view looking down at
Exactly.
yourself. Okay.
So what would it look like from my perspective? But then you have to add in the other senses. When you're picturing yourself doing it, for me, going up to the top of Everest, I could hear the styrofoam crunching of the snow under my feet. I could smell the ozone. I could feel the sun beating on my face. So if you're going, I don't know, say your goal is to buy a new Audi R8. I don't know what it is. It's first car that popped my mind,
There
right?
you go.
Nice car. What color is it? When you sit in it, how does it feel? Is it leather? What does it smell like? That new car smell? Whatever your goal is, picture that using all five senses. And then the key component here that everybody usually misses is when you're accomplishing it, how does it make you feel?
Ooh,
Because
okay.
that emotional aspect makes it real to your mind body connection. So I would say those three big time.
That's awesome. That's great. Those are something that I know I will even use for myself. So I know the listeners will as well. Um, One of the other things we always do at the end of each podcast is we share a quote that kind of ties it together. And I know you and I were talking, and you've got a quote that is near and dear to you. So if you could please share that with the listeners, that'd be awesome.
Oh, absolutely. It's actually a quote by Nelson Mandela, and it's on the back of my business card. And on the back of the business card, there's a picture. There's three of us pulling a sled to the North Pole. So the picture is actually with the sun in the distance. It's a beautiful photo. I'm in the middle of this, and it was taken about 5 miles from the North Pole, right? So it's just an expanse of white with the sun in the background. And the quote is, "It always seems impossible until it's done."
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love quotes that are short and to the point, but powerful. And I feel like you were just talking about the senses, and I can picture your card and even start picturing like I'm there and viewing that. So that's sweet. That's awesome. So Sean, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to jump on here and share your knowledge with us. I know you're a super busy guy, so I really appreciate it, and I'm very thankful for you being on here. One of the things I would love to do is, how could people reach out, follow you, learn more about you and your causes? Is there some places people could go to do that?
That's the easiest question you've asked so far. Yeah. Yeah. Just head to SeanSwarner.com, like Sean Connery, like the proper way,
Oh,
SEAN.
perfect.
Swarner, the Warner Brothers with an S. So SeanSwarner.com.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the show notes at the bottom for people to be able to get there. I know there's a lot of great stuff. I spent some more time on there today perusing. It looks like it's always changing and evolving. So super excited to see where you're going from here. And continue to follow along in your journey. Love to continue to chat and keep in touch. Thank you again. I appreciate it. And as always, I hope everyone has a great day and defeats the week.